Welcome back in, guys, to One Piece chapter 1084. My name is Sai, and today we're going to be hopping into the chapter, talking a little bit about it and dissecting some small details. So with that being said, let's get into it. So to kick this week off, Oda decided to give us a color spread depicting the One Piece girls, since a couple weeks back he gave us the One Piece boys in a color spread. And there are some small details we can pick out here, like the fact that Zeus is here for some odd reason. And yeah, since this is supposed to parallel the previous color spread, I did look a little bit deeper into what some of the shirts said, because last time around we had the Sanji cocking book, so I was wondering if we could find anything interesting here. So in this spread, Perona is wearing a shirt that says Kumasi for Kumasi, her pet bear. We also have Ulti wearing a shirt that says Devil's Sister because she's the devilish sister of page 1. We have Nami wearing a shirt that says Weather Queen, which is very fitting. And last but not least, we also have Vivi wearing a shirt that says Tiger. And I don't really know what Vivi and tigers have to do with each other, so if you guys know, please let me know down below. And the last thing we can see from this spread that is notable is the fact that Yamato is holding onto the Sunny. Oda is definitely teasing the fact that she did not join the Straw Hats, although I just gotta say it right here, I am coping super hard, and deep in my heart, I do hope that Yamato does join. So, going on with the chapter, we see Sabo is still inside Pangaea Castle, and he's setting some guards on fire. This is when he runs into Jewelry Bonney, who just says, hey, you don't know me, but I am the daughter of Kuma, and we have the same goal. So they end up teaming up together, and they run through the halls. This gets off-screened, but they actually do work together and find the guard keys, and then they eventually pass it off to Karasu. And after that, we have some guards running up from behind them, but thankfully Sabo, the Rizzler, picks up Bonney off of her feet and jumps above the corridors. And the guards do the most NPC thing I have ever seen in One Piece. 4 royal guards of the Holy Land's castle got confused when Sabo and Bonney disappeared in front of them, and they didn't bother to look up maybe they jumped up to the scaffolding. No, these guys just said, all right, you know, they must have disappeared. And to continue on with their NPC-esque behavior, they actually name drop something very important. One guard says, hey, they must have disappeared because they saw it. They must have seen the legendary Phantom Room. In regards to the Phantom Room, I feel like we've actually already seen this place before, and I think it's either one of 2 places. It's either one, Imu's flower garden, or it could even be the place where we see Im looking at the giant straw hat, since we do know that was a giant corridor with multiple rooms. So Sabo takes note of this conversation, and this is most likely what spurs him onward onto finding out about Im's existence by the end of the flashback, because Sabo has no reason to look for the Phantom Room, to look for Im, because he's already completed all of his objectives. He 1, destroyed the food supply, 2, declared war, and 3, found Kuma's keys. There is no reason to sneak back into the castle, but it is his curiosity that is bringing him back. And I'm super excited because obviously by the end of the chapter, we get the, quote, Im reveal, but we don't actually see what they look like. And we know that one more person gets to see Im sitting on the throne, and that person is Sabo. So somehow, one way or another, Sabo will end up in that room, and that could be a really cool reveal. So after that dialogue, Bonney and Sabo end up splitting up, and Bonney says that she's gonna go off to Egghead Island to see if Dr. Vegapunk has a way to bring back Kuma's consciousness. With them splitting up right here, I am really curious to see if we will see more of Bonney during this flashback. Because Bonney, back in chapter 1061, she mentions that she should tell Luffy about Sabo and what happened at the Reverie. But as things stand, she doesn't really know a whole bunch. She split up with Sabo before she even saw her father being freed. She split up from Sabo before anything with King Cobra happened. So I feel like one way or another, Bonney might not be done quite yet. So to keep this breakdown somewhat cohesive and to split it up in equal parts, we're going to talk about the Shirahoshi aspect next, and then at the very end we'll talk about King Cobra and what happens in the throne room. So yeah, we have Shirahoshi being captured by Kuma and St. Charlos. St. Charlos starts doing his goofy little dance in front of Shirahoshi as if he won a game of Fortnite, and this is when Fukaboshi shows up to save her. Mosgard, who is the MVP of this chapter, stops Fukaboshi and says, hey, don't attack him. If you attack a celestial dragon, they know where you live. They have your address. Instead, why not have some pirates do it instead? And this is when Leo and Sai, me, jump in on a double-page spread and slam the hammer down on St. Charlos. I did not expect Oda to dedicate a double-page spread to this attack. This reminds me of the panel where Luffy used Bajrangan on Kaido. Like, you got the panels on the side, the reactions and everything, and then you have the impact in the middle. It is that impactful. And when you look at these attacks, these aren't attacks that just a normal person would walk away from. Yo, Sai uses Drill Dragon Nail. Don Chinjiao acknowledged that the Drill Dragon Nail that Don Sai can do is stronger than his own, which, as a reminder, Don Chinjiao's Drill Dragon Nail could break an ice continent. So you're telling me that St. Charlos takes this attack, and Leo's tail hammer, of course, and survives? That's actually insane, because in this chapter, you can see St. Charlos leave the corporeal dimension. The guy actually gets flattened like it's an old school cartoon. We even have his dad stepping in on the next page, just memeing about him, saying, "Whoa, look how they massacred my boy." It's very cartoony, and I'd honestly expect no less from two members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. With that being said though, St. Charlos is still alive if you're wondering if he's actually dead, because in chapter 1054, Kizaru and Akainu mention that this was an attempted murder, so he actually did not die and he survives this attack somehow. After seeing his master get bullied, Kuma actually jumps in and he tries to shoot Don Sai and Leo, but this is when Morley, the giant MVP, hits him with an underground suplex, and also Karasu shows up with the keys that Sabo and Bonney gave him. So yes, it looks like this whole situation is going to be resolved quite soon, and I am wondering how they're going to transport Kuma since he's still, quote, hostile right now. So there are still a lot of questions with this, but with that being said, one of the fodder people in the area mentioned something kind of significant. They said, hey, they hit a celestial dragon. The admirals are going to show up soon. Since Morley and I guess part of Karazu's devil fruit are here in the square, that means that the admirals are no longer fighting them. They are freed up. So they could very well make an appearance in the next chapter. But also, another person that could make an appearance would be someone from the God Knights. Because back in chapter 1054, they mentioned that St. Mosgard excused the criminals, referring to Don Sai and Leo. But the God Knights are the ones mediating this dispute. So there's actually a very good chance in the next coming chapters, we could see one of them make an appearance right here. So with this being the case, I am really curious to see what will happen to Sai and Leo, since this is a very complicated matter. And one more thing I do want to throw out there is that they could very well still be at the Holy Land at this point in time, because we do not know where they are currently in the story. They show up to the Reverie, this happens, and then that's it. We don't know anything else about Sai or Leo, or if they even returned home. So now, let's rewind a little bit to the King Cobra part of the chapter. We get a pretty cool page where we see King Cobra in a wheelchair, the Gorosei, and the MD throne all in one. And Oda puts a lot of attention into detail here, because if you actually count the swords, you can count 50 on the bottom row and 19 exactly on the top row, which I just gotta say is very impressive considering how small they are in the panels. So in this chapter, we learn the reason why King Cobra sought an audience with the Gorosei. It is because he wanted to ask about his late ancestor, Queen Lili. 800 years ago, when Queen Lili turned down a spot to become a celestial dragon, she was supposed to return home and rule over Arabasta. But that just never happened. Her little brother had to rule instead because she never made it back home. And King Cobra wants to know what happened to her, and also, why was her name erased from the annals of history? So during King Cobra's lore dump, he says something really interesting. He says that once the 20 kings and queens that founded the world government ascended and became celestial dragons, they erased everything about their dynasty during that process. And their excuse for this is to make the transition of the new kings and queens into their previous spots a lot easier. But it doesn't seem like that's the case. Because if that were true, then Queen Lili would be documented in Arabasta's history books. but she isn't. So what this means is that the world government and celestial dragons used the excuse of transitioning new kings and queens easier as a reason to erase history of the previous reign of kings. There is something there that they don't want anybody to find out about, and obviously this has to tie in with the Void Century. Even though King Cobra doesn't blatantly say it in this chapter, we all can understand that King Cobra knows that the world government probably did something dirty to Queen Lili. They probably got rid of her. And during all of this, while the Gorosei are feigning ignorance, we actually see Im in the flower room listening into this conversation. The Gorosei continue to play dumb, so King Cobra presses harder. This man says, then, if you don't know that, then what do you know about the will of D? The Gorosei are very much taken aback by this question, and they say, hey, wait, why do you ask that? And King Cobra finishes off by saying, the truth is, a short letter penned by the queen has been passed down from one generation to the next. And it's like, yo, what is that letter? What did Queen Lili have to do with the will of D? So one more thing in regards to Queen Lili, but a lot of people have been scouring the story to see if we might have had some inkling or some foreshadowing of Queen Lili leading up until this point. And I actually think we did. And hear me out, because this is a crazy headcanon connection that honestly could be true and it doesn't have to be true. It's just something I want to throw out there. But there is one character that we know of and are on friendly terms with that existed 800 years ago. That character being Zunisha. Zunisha was a part of Joy Boy's crew 800 years ago, and then he was later cursed to walk across the seas for an eternity. But all the while, he had a country on his back, that country being Zou. And what happened when the Straw Hats reached Zou? Well, they happened to have a national treasure, and that national treasure just so happened to be a dress that they gave to Nami. My crazy headcanon leap is that that dress that they gave to Nami is actually Queen Lili's dress from the Void Century. And you might be wondering, why does this even matter? And honestly, I don't think it does. I just think it would be a really cool point to make that if Zunisha was a part of Joy Boy's crew, I don't think it would be too crazy to say that Queen Lili, Vivi's ancestor, was also a part of Joy Boy's crew. And not to mention, but if Luffy is supposed to be this era's version of Joy Boy, then it also makes sense if Nami were to wear Queen Lili's dress at some point, since as stated by the color spread, Nami is our weather queen. So, getting back to the chapter, after Cobra asks the hard question, the Gorosei, Cobra, stand shocked, or I guess Cobra can't stand because he's in a wheelchair. They're all shocked because behind them, we see a shadowy figure emerge. They slowly and menacingly walk up to the throne and sit down where no one should. And they utter the words, Lili. Oh yeah, I just want to throw this out there, but I know that a lot of people have said Lily beforehand, and I did as well. I'm kind of guilty of that. But I do think Lili, which is what a lot of translation sites are going with, makes a lot more sense. Since we have Vivi, TT, so I think Lili just fits a lot better as well. The minute that Im stepped into this room was the minute that King Cobra's fate was sealed in stone. And now, the question that arises from this is, why did Im decide to show themselves to King Cobra? And how does current day Vivi tie into all of this? Because back in the flower room over 100 chapters ago, Im was actually holding a picture of Vivi. That was the one picture that Im couldn't bring themselves to cut up. We saw Shirahoshi being cut up, we saw Blackbeard and Luffy being torn apart, but Im couldn't bring themselves to tear up Vivi's picture. Is that because Vivi reminded them of Queen Lili? And to back up this theory a little bit more, in a cover page, we actually have Vivi just playing around with some birds, and the title of the chapter is called Spitting Image. Is Vivi a spitting image of Queen Lili? Which I feel like would make a lot of sense, because even back in Arabasta, near the end of it, King Cobra says that Vivi looks just like her mother. So having the females of the Nefertari family all look alike would make a lot of sense, and it's already based in the story. Two final things I do want to talk about in regards to Eam. One of them is a little bit goofy, and then the other one is a little bit more serious. The goofy one is the fact that people are still trying to deduce how tall Eam actually is. Every time we've seen Eam, they've just been super short in stature, and in this chapter it is no different. Obviously, Oda cannot scale everything 1-to-1. He's not over here, drawing the inches on Eam. But if we look at Eam in comparison to the handrails and then compare the same handrails to the Gorosei, you can tell that Eam is just a really short person. The second thing I do want to talk about with Eam, and this could be cool foreshadowing, but when we get the screenshot of Eam sitting on the empty throne, we actually see 10 of the 19 swords in front of them, which I think is a really interesting number because Oda could honestly show all 19 swords here, but instead he picked out the number 10 specifically. And there are a lot of theories out there saying that there are 10 God Knights and one of them might have just left. So if you're a fan of that theory, this could be some fuel to that fire. Alright, so now that we finished off the chapter, it is time to get into some comments from the previous videos. So the first comment we have actually counts for a lot of comments out there because I see a lot of people are hopping on board on the idea that Eam is actually Queen Lili. I think the reason why a lot of people are hopping on board this theory is because a majority of the fan base believes that Eam is actually a woman from the Void Century. And now that we have a name drop of somebody who fits that criteria, being Queen Lili, people are kind of putting them together. And you know what? I'm not a hater of this theory whatsoever. But for me, I feel like it's not going to be the case, simply because I feel like there's going to be more towards Eam's reveal. And it would also be a little bit strange if Eam, or I guess Lili in this scenario, is the one who ends up killing King Cobra, her descendant. But then again, I guess that could explain the crazy shock on Cobra's face when Eam does make their reveal. Because obviously he looks up and he's like, whoa! So that could be because it's actually Lili, or it could just be because some random person is sitting on the empty throne. The shock could go both ways. But yeah, I don't think it's Queen Lili personally, and if it was Queen Lili, it would beg the question of why would they change their name to Eam all of a sudden? And now, on to the next comment. They say, honestly, it's a really good chapter. Eam being Queen Lili's former lover would be mind-blowing and gives rise to so many theories. But of course, I would rather we get back to Egghead Island to finish off the arc, but indeed Oda is cooking so much stuff right now. And the reason I picked out this comment is because I've seen a lot of people say this as well, that maybe Eam and Lili were potential lovers, or even Nakama on the same crew. And I could see it. We have to remember that Lili was a part of the original 20 people from the Void Century. If Eam is immortal, if Eam was from that time period, then they probably did have a deep connection. And again, if Vivi is the spitting image of Lili, then that would explain why Eam couldn't bring themselves to tear apart that picture. And now, on to the last comment. They say, I think we'll have Eam's face reveal sooner than we think. If they talk, that means the anime will have to make them talk. That must mean that the anime crew will have to ask Oda if Eam is a male or a female voice, and just that could be a major clue. Like with Tenguyama being Sukiyaki's voice actor, which I thought was a hilarious giveaway. So if you guys don't actually know this little tidbit, we never really knew who Tenguyama was for the longest time, but when the anime got there, like they said, Sukiyaki and Tenguyama had the same voice actor, thus tying the characters together, and then when it's revealed that Tenguyama is Sukiyaki, nobody was really surprised. So I am really curious to see who will play the voice actor of Eam. And the best part, or maybe the worst part for some people, is that voice actors for characters usually gets leaked sooner rather than later too. And when that happens, we'll finally have the answer as to whether Eam is a guy or a girl. Or they could still be an alien, and we might actually have E.T. coming in for a voice acting role. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching this video. Sorry we didn't have too many comments to go through, but I feel like these 3 or 2-ish comments really encapsulated a majority's feelings, so if you have anything else you want to add, please leave it down below, and maybe we'll bring it up in the breakdown with Par coming out this weekend. But with that being said, thank you again, and I really appreciate you guys for stopping by. Please consider liking, commenting, and subbing down below, And super thank you to the Patreon members here on the side and the members here as well, because we have a whole bunch of you now, and I don't even know where to put some of these names. I'm gonna have to come up with a brand new graphic just to show my love for all the people who have supported this channel. And even if you're not on that list, you are here, you are supporting the channel just by watching, and I really freaking appreciate you. So with that being said, my name is Sai, and I'm signing out. Peace.